If you would like to know if your exposure to this toxic chemical is ruining your health, you clicked on the right video. Hi, I'm Dr. Corey Stern, and welcome to my channel, Take Control of Your Health. If you have not yet had a chance to subscribe, but you were meaning to, please hit the subscribe button right now. And if the contents of this video is something that you find useful, don't forget to hit the like button because it does help more people find the information. And last and most importantly, don't forget to share this with anyone that you know that you think would benefit from it. So I am so excited to have a guest today that has taught me just about, or I want to say everything that I know about the toxic chemical glyphosate. And Dr. Stephanie Seneff, I will say, is the world's renowned scholar on this topic. And I couldn't even believe that she agreed to be on my show. I feel so honored. So I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background and how you became this expert on glyphosate.
Okay, yes. Well, my education is all from MIT, starting with undergraduate, master's, EE degree, and a PhD degree. So 4 degrees from MIT. The bachelor's was in biology or biophysics, and then the rest of them are in electrical engineering and computer science. So kind of an eclectic background. And I spent most of my career, I've been at MIT all my life. I love the place. And I spent most of my career developing dialogue interaction with computers. So human-computer dialogue systems, precursors to Amazon Echo and the Siri iPhone. So it was nice that we developed this technology at a time when we thought it would never be practical, but it was great to see it reach fruition in our lifetime and become a marketable thing. So that was satisfying. But I got interested in, I've been interested in biology all my life, and I watched the autism rates go up in the first 10 years of this century. Every year more, and oh, we're just diagnosing it more, don't worry. And I didn't think so. I had never seen anybody with autism when I was a child, and I knew it was like 1 in 10,000 at that time, and now it's like 1 in 36. So it's pretty scary. The numbers are really quite frightening, and when you project, you can figure 1 in 2 the children born in 2032 will end up on the autism spectrum. So that's very, very sobering. It's not going to work. We have to figure out what's causing autism, and we have to fix it, or we're toast. I mean, I can't imagine a world in which 80% of the boys have autism. I can't imagine it. So we have to do something. And I feel it's an urgent situation. I wanted to, they were talking about genetics, it's all genetics, and they're looking for genetic correlations and whatnot, focusing on genetics in the research agenda. Very little money was going into looking into toxic exposures, because to me, it seems obvious it's got to be toxic exposure. So I didn't know what, but I started looking around 2007. I was able, luckily, to kind of shift my research. I was very fortunate that it's a Taiwanese company, Quanta Computers, that funds me. And I basically wrote a totally different proposal that year. I'd been doing dialogue systems for language learning, for English-speaking people learning Chinese. And I just switched over and I said, I want to do statistical correlations between toxic chemicals and disease. And luckily, they were kind of into, a medicine, and they were looking into technology uses for medicine. So it wasn't completely off the wall as far as they were concerned. So they've been funding this research ever since then. I want to put a shout out to Quanta Computers, awesome company. They're a computer company, obviously, but they are interested in this work, and they've been supporting me all this time. So, and I'm still working at MIT. So I've been at MIT all my life, and now I'm a senior research scientist, which is the highest rank on the research staff. So that's sort of my background. But anyway, glyphosate was something that I didn't know about. I didn't even know the word when I first started looking for chemicals that might be correlated with autism. And I looked at a lot of things for 5 years. I understood a lot more about the symptoms of autism, and I understood there was some problem with the gut linked to autism. So I was looking for something in the food or in the water, something that was exposing the gut to toxins. And so it was just completely by luck that I happened to be at a conference where Professor Don Huber, he's over 80 years old, he's a retired professor from Purdue. He gave a 2-hour presentation on glyphosate. I walked in not knowing what glyphosate was, and I walked out believing that I had found the answer. It was that dramatic. It was so perfect, because what he talked about as far as what glyphosate does matched very well with what I knew about autism. It was so perfect that I said, this has to be it. And so I went back and dropped everything else. And I've been working, pretty much concentrated on glyphosate for ever since 2012. So that's over a decade, culminating in this book, which is Toxic Legacy: How the Weed Killer Glyphosate is Destroying Our Health and the Environment. And this book really goes into the mechanism by which I believe glyphosate is insidiously, cumulatively toxic and causing, it's maybe the primary causal factor in the epidemic we're seeing today in a long list of diseases, chronic diseases like diabetes, obesity, autism, Alzheimer's, various cancers. I mean, there's a huge list, of course, inflammatory bowel. The list goes on and on. All these diseases are going up dramatically in step with the dramatic rise in the use of glyphosate on our core crops.
And let's add to that list. I see so many patients coming in now with literally holes somewhere in their gut, a hole.
Yes.
In their large intestine, a hole in their rectum. And I think that is also
leaky gut. Yeah, that's been shown in studies.
But I mean, literal like holes.
A hole. That's incredible.
Surgical repair. Yeah.
That's really incredible.
So let's talk a little bit about what glyphosate is for those people who, like you, back in 2012, didn't know what it was. Where does glyphosate come from?
Right. So glyphosate is actually a pretty simple chemical as far as chemicals go. It's the active ingredient in the herbicide Roundup. Most people know about Roundup. You can buy Roundup at your local garden store and use it to kill the dandelions in your yard or the weeds growing in your walkway. Very convenient, completely safe for humans. But it kills all plants except for those that have been engineered to resist it. So that seems a bit odd to me. Completely safe for humans, but it kills all plants. We have a lot in common with plants, and I think I'm very skeptical of the idea that could be true, and in fact it's not true. And I think that recently there's been really a large number of articles coming out recently by researchers looking at glyphosate and discovering surprising things about its toxicity, particularly at very low doses, endocrine disruptor, causing effects on the second or third generation of the person who's exposed, this kind of thing. They've shown that in mouse studies, that when you expose a pregnant mouse to low dose glyphosate at a level that the mouse doesn't really look sick at all, and it's pregnant, and its offspring don't look sick either. But by the time you look at their offspring and the ones after that, it gets worse and worse. And it's all because of that exposure to the grandmother or the great grandmother. And I think we're seeing that in humans also today. It's part of what's driving up the autism epidemic, because it gets worse and worse with each generation. Transgenerational effects, low dose, and that's a characteristic of endocrine disruptors, which glyphosate definitely is.
Yeah, so in addition to glyphosate, all the other toxic chemical and metal exposures that children have, and yeah, so it's just, we definitely see the outcomes happening in real time with my patients walking in, and I have more and more children coming in with health issues and developmental issues. So glyphosate was one of the chemicals that was created by Monsanto. I want to say that almost every extremely deadly toxic chemical on planet Earth right now is created by that company.
It's got quite a record. And of course, the good news about glyphosate is the lawsuits that have been coming up recently. And it was several years back, maybe 2016, when Dwayne Lee Johnson issued a lawsuit against Monsanto. And actually, at that time, it was Bayer, because Bayer had just recently bought Monsanto, claiming that glyphosate had caused his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he was in his 40s. He had young children. It was really tragic. And he was working on schoolyards. His job was to spray glyphosate on schoolyards, which is also very disturbing. So, and he won, and it was just a miracle that he won that case. I was, of course, you just assume they're going to throw so much money at it. They're going to have such fantastic lawyers, they'll get out of it. But it didn't work that time. The jury awarded him something like $283 million damages. And a lot of it was because Monsanto had lied, and had misled, and they were very uncooperative with this problem as well. And so the jury really took to it, and this was just amazing that he won that trial. And eventually the the judge cut it way back. And I think they're still in litigation. I mean, they keep on challenging, they fight these things all the way to the Supreme Court if they have to. So it's a nasty, it really takes a lot of courage to go up against them. But once he won that case, two others followed in quite rapid succession, and they also won large jury awards. And now there's like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of patients waiting in the wings to get their day in court. So there's a huge backlog of people who are accusing Monsanto's glyphosate of causing their non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which of course is a cancer of the blood.
And here's the crazy thing. So now we've established in a court of law that there's a connection between this chemical and this cancer, and yet it's still being used. It wasn't banned, which has happened with other Monsanto chemicals, where they even get banned and then they get they get put back onto the okay list. So I know that in the United States it's absolutely legal and quite commonly used as a weed killer and on almost all commercial crops.
And it's unregulated.
Right,
many
in
of
the
the
US.
herbicides are regulated, that you have to get a license and things like that. But glyphosate, you can just buy it anywhere. Anybody can buy it.
I saw a guy on the corner. I was walking my dogs, and he was pouring it on this little patch of grass. I'm in New York City. There's not a whole lot of grass here, but he's pouring it on this patch of grass. And I yelled at him and I said, "You're poisoning the neighborhood." And he looks at me, confusedly and says, "What?"
I know.
No idea. So, but it is banned in other countries. And I've heard you talk about how it was used worldwide and now it's banned in some countries. But even though it's been banned, it still persists in the environment for a very long time.
And it also even gets used when it's banned, because you have to really have a lot of regulation to keep people from using it. There's a contraband, market, so people are still able to get it in the countries where it's banned. But I have to really emphasize Mexico. I'm really happy to see Mexico really determined to ban it, I think, in 2024. And US has been doing all kinds of pressure to try to get them to back down. It's really annoying to see that. I would hope that Mexico might be a lesson for us, And Mexico, actually, there was a study done, and the Canadian government actually measured levels of glyphosate in a whole bunch of different foods, both imports and Canadian foods. And then my friend, Tony Mitra, who got them to do this, they gave him the data, and he published a book called Poison Foods of North America. And basically what it showed was that Canada and the United States were way out front as far as the amount of glyphosate contamination in their foods compared to Europe. So various countries from Europe that imported into Canada much lower levels consistently. And also Mexico. Mexico came in really in line with Europe compared to the United States and Canada. So Mexico already uses a lot less glyphosate than we do. And now they're going to move towards none, which is really, really awesome.
It's the definition of insanity. We know that pretty much all commercially grown food is contaminated with glyphosate. Anything that's genetically modified is contaminated with glyphosate. So this means that if you're eating food in any kind of fast food, type of place, any kind of fast food at all, you're eating glyphosate. And then even if you are eating in a restaurant, chances are you're eating glyphosate. So it's really important to understand how dangerous it is. And this, my whole show is about how to clean up your food. I do commercials for an organization called Farm Match, which helps anybody in the US. If you put your zip code in, you will find a small-scale family farm growing clean, nutrient-dense food that doesn't use glyphosate. And the link to that will be in the description of this video. It is possible to avoid it. But let's talk a little bit about what it does to the average person. So one of the things that I learned, probably from you, is the connection between glyphosate and an amino acid called glycine and a problem that it causes. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay, I just want to first point out that buying non-GMO is not good enough because some of the highest levels have been found in non-GMO crops. And that's because they're sprayed right before the harvest. Glyphosate is commonly used as a desiccant on wheat and oats and barley, and also chickpeas, garbanzo beans, so the legumes, and some of the seed nuts, seed foods, oil seeds. So the highest levels were found consistently among legumes and oats and wheat in the study in Canada, which is really surprising because those are all non-GMO.
And the legumes, especially pea, there's so many products being made with pea
Pea
protein now.
protein,
So
yeah.
you're concentrating pea when you make it into a powder, and they're putting it in everything. It's in nut milks, it's in protein bars.
Right.
And yeah, so you're basically just eating and drinking glyphosate all the time when you eat that stuff. It's amazing how it's in everything and people don't know it. People don't read
That's right.
labels, and that's why we're doing this
Well, there aren't
video.
labels. That's the problem. I mean,
Well,
there
it's
aren't
not
labels
like
for the
right,
glyphosate
right,
or
right,
for the
right.
GMO in our
But when I
country.
see pea protein
Mhm.
as an ingredient, I see glyphosate. So
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. That's the same here. And I really try to avoid bread unless it's organic. And I like
right.
bread, and I'm not allergic. But a lot of people, of course, have gluten intolerance. And I think that's directly a consequence of glyphosate.
Yes, definitely. Well, that's why these small scale family farms with clean, nutrient dense food, they don't use any kind of toxic chemicals on their food, and it's all their soils are organic. So they use organic fertilizer. So that's really the safest way to eat. If you're outside the US, I also have a link as to where to find this type of food in many places in the world.
That's
So
a great service. Thank you for
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
So
anyway, we'll get back to the glycine analog
yes.
situation because that is really fascinating biology. And this is what I zeroed in on pretty quickly as I was studying glyphosate. So glyphosate is actually a glycine molecule, except that it has an extra methylphosphonate unit attached to its nitrogen atom. Glycine is an amino acid, and it's the smallest of the 20 or so amino acids that make up the protein. So proteins are built from amino acids according to the DNA code. Most people should know that, but many people don't. So
Right.
that's basic biology. The DNA code is a 4-letter code of nucleotides, and then they get translated into protein by these enzymes that are able to grab the right one according to the code, put it in place, and make a sequence like paper dolls holding hands of amino acids in a row, turning into and then they fold into a protein, and the proteins are the workhorses of the body. They're the enzymes, they're the um, what's it called, transporters, um,
They're
signaling
everything.
molecules. Yeah,
Yeah.
they do so much. And structural molecules, they're all proteins. They're very, they're central to biology. And so glycine is an amino acid. It's the smallest one, has no side chains. Glyphosate has no side chains. So it fits, it matches glycine is the problem. So I think when the protein is being assembled and the code calls for glycine, if there's a glyphosate molecule handy, and if there's room for it because it's got that extra methylphosphonate, it'll stick it in instead of glycine. And in some cases, that becomes deadly. Like that protein becomes, it'll misfold into an amyloid, structure that can cause amyloidosis, which could be like neurodegenerative diseases. It can become completely inoperative as an enzyme. For example, myosin is a muscle contracting enzyme. It has 11 glycines that are highly important to it. And there was a study just on one of those glycines where they swapped out the glycine for alanine, which is the closest match to glycine. It has an extra methyl group. And when they did that, the protein could only contract at 2% capacity.
Wow.
And so if you think about the gut and the contractile motor, the motility of the gut to push the feces to move things through the gut during digestion, that's myosin. And if that molecule gets messed up by glyphosate, by virtue of glyphosate substituting for that glycine, it won't be able to contract at adequate capacity. And you'll get constipation, you'll get SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because things are not moving. Things are backed up and they're stagnant. The bacteria stay up high because it's not being pushed through. It can cause a lot of trouble just for that one possibility of glyphosate disrupting myosin. So the protein that glyphosate famously disrupts, it's an enzyme, it's called EPSB synthase. And it's an enzyme in a pathway, biological pathway called the shikimate pathway. This is very basic biology of glyphosate. Everybody says this is true. Glyphosate suppresses that enzyme, and that enzyme is essential to the plants. They die if they can't use that enzyme. Whereas our cells don't have that enzyme at all. Human cells are missing that whole pathway. This shikimate pathway is not present in human cells. So this is the argument that says, oh, this is wonderful, this thing kills all the plants, but it doesn't harm us because we don't have that pathway. That's the argument they use. It's pretty convincing. There's a big problem with that because our gut microbes do have that pathway, and they use it to produce essential molecules for the host. And so the outcome of that pathway is the 3 amino acids, and these are the aromatic amino acids, phenylalanine, tryptophan, and tyrosine. Those 3 amino acids are produced by the gut microbes using that shikimate pathway. When the gut microbes are exposed to glyphosate, they become unable to produce those amino acids. And so this causes deficiency in those amino acids, which then causes also deficiency in the derivatives of those amino acids, which are also super, super important to our health. And that's thyroid hormone, the neurotransmitters, melatonin, serotonin, dopamine, epinephrine, all of those very important biologically active molecules in the brain in particular come out of that shikimate pathway. So we're going to get deficiencies in all of those things. And I think deficiency in serotonin in the brain is associated with obesity and depression and violent behavior. And I think we're seeing those things, a big problem with all 3 of those in today's world.
Yeah, plus epidemic in thyroid disease.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you that, and also dopamine, I have so many people coming in with neurodegenerative movement disorders, and constipation and gut issues are the
Constipation
is
yeah, going up dramatically. That's one of the things I talked about in my book.
Yeah, I mean, almost every single new patient that I have now is not pooping correctly. It's snowballing. So yeah, that is definitely one of the causes. So basically, if we can break it down into simple language, your gut flora can't work if it's exposed to glyphosate. And the other problem is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that glycine is it's most abundant in foods like organ meat and things that people
collagen has tons of glycine,
and people don't eat a lot of. So
that's a good point.
Yeah,
because the organ meats are incredibly healthy if they weren't loaded up with toxins. I mean, liver is a very healthy source of so many vitamins and minerals and whatnot, but it gets poisoned. It's where the poison gathers because that's the liver's job to try to clear it. So unfortunately, I bet you the cows' livers today look horrible. Like we have an epidemic in fatty liver disease. Kids are getting fatty liver disease today. I think glyphosate is a direct cause of that. In fact, it's been shown experimentally, both in humans and in rodent studies. These rats that were exposed to low dose glyphosate, they showed that they developed fatty liver disease with very low dose exposure. And there was a study on humans that looked at different people suffering from fatty liver disease, the more extreme cases, the less extreme cases, and then controls that were healthy. And they found statistically significant differences in the levels of glyphosate in the urine of those 3 groups. I was really surprised that came out so clean, just to measure the glyphosate in the urine, which is really just looking at the last 2 weeks exposure. Wow. And that worked as an indicator to compartmentalize those 3 categories of people. So really, I think, and I know how glyphosate causes fatty liver disease. It really disrupts the liver in a big way. And the metabolism of sugar, sugar produces fatty liver. Fructose, for example.
Right.
I think the metabolism of fructose in the gut gets messed up by glyphosate. Fructose gets sent off to the liver, and the liver converts it to fat, stores it.
Yes, high fructose corn syrup especially is one of the leading causes of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. But so my guess is that people who are already maybe a little deficient in glycine, because the muscle meat has less glycine in it than organ meat, and collagen comes from different parts of the animal that people are not
the tendons,
eating.
like the chicken feet, it would have a lot of glycine.
Right.
Pig's feet, that's something that other cultures love, but we don't touch it. Pig's feet, chicken feet, those kinds of
we
things.
we stopped eating it in the US. So one of the one of the things that I promote is with my patients is the ingestion of good quality, clean organ meats from these small scale family farms where the animals are not being
Right.
exposed to these chemicals. Because if they are exposed, you're eating the glyphosate. And just like pea protein, collagen is a powder that's concentrated. So if you're eating collagen from an animal that's had glyphosate exposure, you're getting a lot of glyphosate along with your glycine, and then your glycine is not binding because the glyphosate is binding to the receptor. So I have a whole video just on that topic. The other the
That's
other
very
thing,
important.
yeah, I mean, there's not that many, at least in the US, there's not that many collagen brands that are
I
labeled
know.
glyphosate free, but there are a couple. And I don't know if you know about the detoxproject.org
Yes.
is an organization that tests foods for
Right.
glyphosate and then will put a label on them that they're glyphosate free. Companies have to pay the Detox Project to do the testing, but it's such a valuable service. So you can just go on detoxproject.org. I'll put a link in the video in the description, and then you can actually look up. There's lists of foods and products that are glyphosate free. So I think the last time I checked, there was only one collagen on there, but I know that the collagen that I use called Great Lakes Wellness
Oh,
says
yes.
glyphosate free on their label. So that's the only
That's
one
really great.
that I'll
Yes.
use now. Yeah. So the other thing that I want to mention, I want to just mention water for a minute because water had, that all these chemicals get into the ground soil, they're all in the water. And it's so important for your water to be really clean. So I want to do a little talk about the water filter that I use, and I'm drinking it right now.
Mhm.
According to the Environmental Working Group, your tap water may contain pesticides and herbicides, fluoride, arsenic, heavy metals, chlorine, chloramines, which is a mixture of ammonia and chlorine bleach, and other bad tasting or bad smelling contaminants. Water softeners and reverse osmosis filters produce unnatural, unbalanced water. I know so many people ask me about reverse osmosis. No, they actually take the minerals out of the water. Small pitcher filters are very limited in what they can remove. And filter manufacturers use misleading words like remove, reduce, take out, but often don't tell you how much contaminant they remove or for how long. You need a filter that removes toxins like arsenic and fluoride down to non-detectable levels for many years while leaving in the healthy minerals. And that's the filter that I have. It's called the Ideal Earth Water Filter. You can get a whole house filter and drink and shower in water that's like pure mountain spring water. Or you can just get an under sink filter if you want a smaller unit. And this filter does three important things. It takes out contaminants, it leaves in minerals, and it restructures the water so that the molecular structure of it is correct and very hydrating. And you can find out more about it at refreshingcleanwater.com. I'll put the link in the video. And you can save $100 on your filter order using the discount code Cori, that's my name, CORI, and the number 23. And I'll put a link to that discount code for you in the description of the video. So I've been using this filter now for 2 years, and it's been a total game changer for me and for my whole family and my dogs. My dogs drink more water since I've had this filter, and water tastes so good. So what else did we not talk about in relation to glyphosate that's so important? You started off by talking about autism, and we know, I mean, I always, anytime an autistic patient comes into my office, I always end up having to do a detox, always. It's almost the first thing that I find that I need to do. So we know that it is a neurologic disorder. It affects the nerve tissue, the brain, as is Alzheimer's. And there are definitely specific toxins that we find associated. I mean, the brains of Alzheimer's patients who, post-mortem, what do you call it? I want to say dissection, but you know what I mean. When they look at the brain tissue, they often find aluminum, which is fairly easy to find. I don't know if they're looking for glyphosate. Do you know?
No, I don't think they have, but they have found aluminum in autistic
Right.
brains post-mortem.
Yes. So aluminum is another extremely toxic chemical that is found in, things that get injected into you, and people eat with, they cook with aluminum cookware. They use antiperspirants that are loaded with aluminum. That's how it literally kills your nerve cells under your arm, and that's how it works. So when you just add all of this together, the toxic load is enormous, and it's amazing that anybody is even still walking around. So, bottom line is, I really think that there's got to be a reason why it's okay and legal to poison the population like this. It's very suspicious to me. And, that's the point of having these videos, is to make you aware so that you can be in control of it on your own. Do you have any specific advice? How do you yourself make sure that you avoid eating glyphosate?
But one thing I want to say about aluminum is that glyphosate is a metal chelator, and 2 glyphosate molecules will wrap themselves around an aluminum cation and get rid of its +3 charge. Aluminum usually has a hard time getting across the gut barrier because it's positively charged. When you wrap it up with glyphosate, it much more easily can cross the gut barrier.
Oh, wow.
And glyphosate creates a leaky gut on top of that to make it very easy for the aluminum to get past it.
That makes so much sense.
Glyphosate escorts aluminum into the brain. I'm predicting this theoretically from the biophysics, and I've actually published a paper on that, proposing that a glyphosate has facilitated the transport of aluminum to the brain. And when you get into the acidic environment of the terminal watershed of the blood, where the blood equilibrates with the tears and the saliva, there's a kind of a cross. In that situation, it's more acidic, and when it's more acidic, glyphosate unloads its cargo. So the aluminum and the glyphosate become independent, and both of them are very toxic in the brain. So I think that glyphosate is able to transport the aluminum to the brain.
That makes
and
so much sense.
And glyphosate also messes up sulfation pathways. I talk about that a lot in my book. The way the body detoxes mercury. So if you've got mercury in your teeth because you've got cavities and whatnot, fillings, the mercury goes into the gut, and normally that mercury can get sulfated in order to get rid of it. But the sulfation pathways are disrupted by glyphosate. And so the mercury doesn't get sulfated, and it becomes very, very toxic. And so that's also a problem. Mercury and aluminum are both, I think, more toxic than they would otherwise be. Glyphosate has also been found in the live virus vaccines. Both Zen Honeycutt and Anthony Samsel detected glyphosate. They measured glyphosate levels in multiple vaccines, and consistently it was the live virus vaccines that contained glyphosate, and the ones that are just like proteins, with some aluminum, for example, they did not. They typically tested negative. But that's because these viruses are grown on media that they haven't made any attempt to avoid, to choose organic nutrients for these.
Right, of course.
For these viruses. And that's extremely concerning, because when you're injecting it past all the barriers, the glyphosate, along with whatever else is in the vaccine, you can imagine. I think that's also contributing to the adverse reactions that people are experiencing to the vaccine.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I always say that, it's one thing if you eat aluminum, your gut will break it down a little bit. It's another thing if you have it injected directly into your bloodstream. But now I have to, my mind is blown because that's not really true. If you're eating aluminum and glyphosate at the same time,
Yeah,
your
it helps
gut,
to get it
yeah,
across the barrier.
it's much worse. Wow. Okay.
And also, Clostridia are associated with autism, overgrowth of Clostridia species in the gut. That's also happens with glyphosate. Glyphosate preferentially kills the beneficial bacteria, lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. They're very sensitive to glyphosate, and this allows Clostridia to overgrow. And then Clostridia releases these toxic phenolic compounds like p-cresol, and those normally get sulfated in the liver to detoxify them, but the sulfation pathway is broken by glyphosate. So those toxic phenolic compounds make their way to the brain, and they actually mess up dopamine metabolism. And there's theory that's a cause of autism. It's through the glyphosate disrupting causing the increase in Clostridia, and then disrupting the ability to detoxify the Clostridia metabolites.
It's so sad. I'm like literally getting tears in my eyes right now. It's ridiculous. And I just, but it's important to know, and this information is going to help me to be able to help my patients better. I actually learned a lot from this video today, which I love. I love having guests on where I learn a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing how the science works, and I'm really concerned that people aren't aware, and the government isn't aware, and people are taught that don't worry about the food, it's fine, and they don't measure. The U.S. government has almost never measured levels of glyphosate in food. They don't bother to look. They know it's all over the food supply. They don't care because they claim it's safe. So as long as you think it's safe, don't worry. But the fact is, there's a lot of evidence that it's not safe, and you see all these diseases going up. Obesity is one that I find really quite fascinating, and I talk about that in my book too. Yes. Again, the biochemistry of that's quite interesting, because I think glyphosate is messing up an enzyme in the liver and in the pancreas called phosphoenolpyruvate carboxykinase, PEP. Phosphoenolpyruvate carboxykinase.
It's quite a mouthful.
Yeah, so that enzyme is really quite interesting, and that enzyme kicks in when the baby's born. It has to get into gear really fast because the baby's been in the womb. It's had plenty of sugar coming in from the mother's blood supply, and now it doesn't. Now it's drinking milk, and it has to get sugar, because sugar is what the brain needs for fuel. And so this enzyme PEPCK allows the liver to convert fats and proteins into sugar. And the liver needs to do that to keep the sugar level in the blood high enough. And you can get a sudden infant death because the blood sugar drops too low, particularly at night. Like if the baby's not nursing until the wee hours of the morning, they haven't had any food since dinner, their blood sugar can get too low, and that can cause them to go into a coma. And I think that may be part of one of the explanations for this sudden infant death syndrome, which is also, of course, increasing over time since glyphosate was introduced on the market. And that same problem, I think, is causing high blood sugar, leading to diabetes, because as the body realizes that you have to be careful, the sugar levels in the blood get too low, you're exercising, you haven't eaten for a while, blood sugar's dropping. That's when PEPCK has to kick in and start making sugar. If it can't do that, you'll go into a coma and die. So the body compensates by keeping the blood sugar levels high in order to have a bigger buffer, because the enzyme is not working well. And I think that's how you get this kind of precursor to diabetes, which is elevated blood sugar. And then eventually it grows into diabetes, which is an epidemic going up exactly in step with the rise in glyphosate usage.
Yeah. I'm going to be sending this video out to all my patients. Because
so the PEPCK is interesting because it actually is an enzyme that binds PEP, which is the same molecule that EPSP synthase binds. And it binds it at a site where there's a highly conserved glycine residue, just as is the case for EPSP synthase. So in fact, with EPSP synthase, it's been shown that if you change that glycine to alanine, which is get rid of that code for glycine, the enzyme is completely insensitive to glyphosate, which is a very strong indicator that glyphosate is actually substituting for that glycine. It doesn't substitute for alanine because the code is wrong. And I think the same thing is going on with PEPCK. It's the exact same situation.
Wow, that's amazing. And you figured that out yourself?
Yes, yes, and it hasn't been shown, so no one has looked. I want somebody to study and see if PEPCK is actually suppressed by glyphosate, because that would
All
be my
right.
prediction.
Anybody watching this video,
Yeah, some chemist needs to do that.
any biochemist, yeah, we need your help. So do you grow your own food?
Not really, but I do have some oranges. I have a lot of oranges, and I
Okay,
have star fruit. So in season, I get star fruit. I get oranges probably half the year, so
that's
a little bit of
wonderful.
fruit. I live in Hawaii, so
Yeah.
but that's it. So I would like to. I have a few herbs too. I have a little herb garden, but that's the extent of my. I'd
All
love
right.
to do more. I'd
Well,
love to do.
you can go on that farm match. It's farmmatch.com/Dr. Corey. Put in your zip code and see if there's
Yes.
any of the small scale family farms with nutrient dense clean food. Don't use any chemicals, and so that you
Yeah,
could
we
have
actually
access
do.
to.
We do a farm to table because we go. We're going to go out, drive down to the farm tomorrow morning and fetch our vegetables and fruits.
Great.
We get that every Saturday. We order it online. It's very nice. It's just directly from the farm.
Great. And then you
And
need the other foods too, the good quality eggs and dairy and meat.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. And I think that's so important. I think for anybody who's just eating a normal diet right now, if you just switch to certified organic, when you shop, look for that certified organic label. Try to not buy any processed foods. I sort of have those two big rules: certified organic, not processed. And I think if you do that conscientiously, you'll improve your health. I would almost guarantee it.
It's a great starting point, plus a really good water filter, because a
That's
lot of
right.
people are not drinking good water also.
That's a
So,
good point.
and when you're talking about food, we have to include everything, including if you're drinking coffee or tea. Tea bags
Spices,
are toxic.
spices.
Spices, I mean, every little thing that you put in your mouth, supplements, everything. So,
Yes, I know
yeah.
organic supplements is something people don't think about,
Right. Well,
like the collagen.
I've been
Which
taking
you,
mine the whole video. I've been taking my organic supplements.
very good.
So thank you so much for this. This was amazing. Um, let's have you back on if we get more information about what you're researching right now. And any last minute things, we can put a link to your book in the
That'd be
description of
great.
the video. And also you have a website, right?
I do. StephanieSeneff.net. Yes.
Okay, stephanieseneff.net. We're going to put a link to that in the description of the video as well. I want to thank everybody for listening. Please, as always, if you have any questions, you can reach me at questions@drcorey.com. You can connect with me through my website, drcorey.com. If you need a health consult, I am available to do that anywhere you are in the world. And again, if you didn't hit subscribe yet, as of the making of this video, I am approximately 40 something subscribers away from 10,000. That's a goal that I've been trying to hit for a while. So help a sister out and hit the subscribe button. Please don't forget to like the video, because it was loaded with such important information. And most importantly, please share this with anyone you know that you think would benefit from the information. And until I see you again, please stay healthy.